Step inside the world's deadliest arena, where the empire perfected a machinery of pain. The sands of the Roman arena stood as a testament to centuries of sanctioned brutality, each grain darkened by the lives extinguished upon it. In the early years of the 2nd century AD, following Emperor Trajan's triumphant conquest of Dacia, Rome celebrated its victory in a manner that today defies comprehension. What unfolded across the Colosseum's massive oval was not merely festivity, nor patriotic exuberance, nor even triumphant display. It was a monumental declaration of the empire's absolute dominion over human life itself. For days that seemed to stretch beyond the limits of human endurance, the Roman populace flowed into the Colosseum in waves. Senators draped in purple, merchants still smelling of bronze and spice, laborers, beggars, women, children, all of them drawn toward the monumental arena that had become, more than any temple or senate hall, the symbolic heart of Rome. They came not for civic discourse or military review, but for something far more primal: the curated destruction of human bodies for public delight. These spectacles did not emerge spontaneously. They were the culmination of centuries in which religious ritual, funerary tradition, and martial display slowly merged into a new cultural phenomenon, a system in which violence, once sacred and symbolic, became organized, scheduled, commercial, and meticulously designed to evoke awe, fear, and belonging. Over time, what had once honored the dead became a mechanism for controlling the living. Inside the Colosseum, ritual transformed into entertainment, and entertainment into ideology. Here, Rome revealed not the virtues it claimed, order, justice, civilization, but the forces that truly sustained its empire: fear, domination, and the normalization of suffering.
Roman entertainment began its evolution innocently enough. Athletic competitions, mock battles, simple hunts. But as the empire expanded, so did its population's appetite for distraction. Prosperity bred boredom, boredom bred restlessness, restlessness needed pacification. The emperors learned quickly that the masses could be governed more easily with spectacle than with policy. Thus began the transformation of the games. What were once straightforward contests of martial skill evolved into exhibitions of methodical cruelty. The arena became a stage on which the empire rehearsed its mastery over bodies, emotions, and narrative. The spectacles served multiple functions at once: affirmation of imperial power, public release of fear and frustration, reinforcement of Roman identity, distraction from political or economic tensions, conditioning of moral sensibilities across generations. The crowds themselves were shaped by the arena's rhythms. Rome did not merely offer violent entertainment, it educated its citizens through it. Children saw cruelty not as aberration, but as social truth. Women watched suffering not as tragedy, but as diversion. Men internalized the lesson that strength alone granted dignity, and that weakness, in all its forms, deserved obliteration. The socio-political genius of the Colosseum lay in its ability to disguise brutality as ceremony. Violence wrapped in pageantry ceased to be violence. It became civic participation. At dawn, when the first shafts of sunlight crept over the arena walls, the day's spectacles began with the executions, the damnati ad bestias and damnati ad gladium. These punishments were not intended to dispense justice. They were crafted to establish emotional tone. The morning was not meant to excite, but to erode. to soften the moral resistance of the crowd through exposure to ritualized suffering. The condemned entered the arena knowing there was no possibility of mercy, no appeal, no humanizing moment. Their humanity had been stripped long before their feet touched the sand. They had become instruments, props, whose final purpose was to prepare the Roman mind for the cruelty that would follow. Executioners in Rome were far from brutes. They were artisans, masters of anatomy whose skill lay not in killing quickly, but in prolonging agony. They used ropes, wheels, fixed frames, and a variety of mechanical devices designed to torment rather than end life. Victims were manipulated into positions that maximized both their suffering and the audience's visibility of that suffering. A man crucified on a pivoting beam could be angled to heighten pain when the crowd grew restless. A woman bound in an animal hide was placed precisely where her panic and desperation would echo through the stone corridors. Condemned criminals sewn into skins and thrown to starved dogs became living metaphors of Rome's message. Those who oppose the state deserve not merely punishment, but humiliation. These executions were the arena's first lesson of the day. Mercy was weakness, and Rome could not afford weakness. The morning shows broke down the spectators' emotional defenses so that by midday, the line between discomfort and fascination had already blurred. The transition from the morning's human executions to the midday animal hunts marked a shift in atmosphere. If the morning extracted horror through intimacy, the Venetoniers produced excitement through unpredictability. The arena floor, meticulously prepared, transformed into an artificial wilderness, a curated ecosystem designed not to celebrate the majesty of nature, but to demonstrate Rome's absolute command over it. The cruelty behind these displays rarely reached the surface. What the audience saw was a hunt. What they did not see was the machinery of suffering beneath. Animals were starved, agitated, or injured to provoke aggression. Some were blinded with heated metal. Others were enclosed in darkness for days before being released into overwhelming light and noise. Herbivores were slashed beforehand to force unnatural hostility. Predators were chained to one another to create frenzied chaos. The hunters, sometimes trained fighters, but more often condemned criminals, were given weapons barely fit for defense: wooden spears, blunted swords, small shields. Their purpose was not survival but performance. The spectacle cultivated a powerful illusion, Rome conquering nature, yet the real victory was subtler. The Venetoniers taught the crowd to cheer at chaos, to crave the destruction of living beings simply because they moved unpredictably. It reinforced the idea that the empire could domesticate even primal fear. For Rome, the Venetoniers were not about the animals. They were about the audience. Few structures in antiquity possessed the engineering sophistication of the Colosseum. Below the arena floor lay a labyrinth, an entire subterranean city humming with coordinated purpose. There, hundreds of workers operated machinery designed not for efficiency, but for theatricality. Elevators lifted cages to ground level with breathtaking suddenness. Trapdoors opened like mouths swallowing or releasing the living. Platforms rotated, scenery rose and fell. The audience often believed they were witnessing spontaneous chaos. In reality, they were watching a meticulously choreographed sequence of reveals and reversals, each designed to manipulate emotion. This machinery didn't simply facilitate cruelty, it transformed it into narrative. It allowed Rome to turn punishment into pageant, execution into entertainment, and suffering into story. The arena was not a place where violence happened. It was a machine built to produce violence. And the crowd, whether they realized it or not, were gears in that machine. As the sun began to descend and the air thickened with the scent of sweat and iron, the most anticipated portion of the day commenced. Gladiators, once slaves, prisoners of war, or condemned men, now both performers and victims, stepped into the arena. Their presence carried a peculiar duality. They were celebrated and disposable, admired and expendable. Contrary to modern myth, not every gladiator was forced to fight to the death. The value of a trained fighter was significant. But as imperial spectacles evolved, so too did the expectation for escalating brutality. The crowd grew impatient with simple contests of skill. They wanted narratives. They wanted reenactments of legendary battles with real human bodies. They wanted the spectacle of impossible odds. Thus emerged the contrived mismatch: a veteran fighter forced to battle multiple opponents, or a skilled gladiator provided with inferior weapons against a fresh adversary. The goal was no longer fairness, it was tension. Draw out the conflict, prolong the spectacle, make the audience lean forward with every faltering step. What the emperors understood, and what the crowd unconsciously embraced, was that emotional investment in these contests did not derive from admiration of skill, but from proximity to despair. A gladiator's greatest suffering was not his wounds, but his humiliation. And that, above all, was the Roman mob's favorite weapon. Rome's cruelty did not operate arbitrarily. Every death in the arena served a purpose. The imperial administration maintained detailed categories of condemned individuals, each assigned a death that matched the state's preferred message. Political prisoners were executed through elaborate symbolic punishments intended to shame them even in death. Religious minorities were mocked, their beliefs inverted in displays meant to delegitimize their gods. Foreign captives from newly conquered lands were forced to reenact their homeland's defeat, reliving their humiliation in front of tens of thousands. Some victims entered the arena voluntarily. Poverty, desperation, or the hope of fleeting fame led free citizens to sign contracts sealing their deaths. That individuals could be driven to trade their lives for momentary recognition reveals the profound psychological hold the arena exerted over Roman society. In these deaths, Rome delivered a message not only to its enemies, but to its own people. Power determines dignity, and Rome alone defines power. Modern sensibilities recoil from the idea of exposing children to extreme violence. In ancient Rome, such exposure was seen not as harmful, but as foundational. Arena attendance was not forbidden to the young, it was encouraged. Children learned early that the empire's stability depended on punishment. Parents used executions as moral lessons, a visual demonstration of consequences. Infants on hips grew into toddlers who clapped at suffering, toddlers into adolescents who reenacted kills as games. Over time, Roman citizens were not simply desensitized, they were shaped, trained, conditioned. In Rome, cruelty was not merely a spectacle, it was a civic education. Behind the Colosseum's grandeur lay a multi-tiered economic system designed to sustain itself across generations. The games were not a pastime, They were an industry. Slave traders sourced humans based on entertainment potential. Animal breeders raised predators in special facilities. Huntsmen captured lions, bears, tigers, panthers, sometimes dying in the attempt. Trainers drilled victims for choreographed deaths. Engineers constructed devices that blended artistry with horror. Merchants profited from the crowds. Landlords charged exorbitant rents near arena districts. Every death supported a network of livelihoods. Reform was nearly impossible, not because Romans were indifferent, but because cruelty had become economically indispensable. Rome did not simply enjoy violence. Rome depended on it. Roman medical knowledge was advanced for its time, but inside the arena, that knowledge was inverted. Physicians did not heal, they preserved. They prevented death where death would come too quickly. They pulled the dying back from the brink so the crowd could witness a few more moments of performance. Executioners, likewise, honed techniques that balanced agony with longevity. Engineers competed to design torture devices that were both mechanically impressive and visually striking. The blending of art and cruelty produced machines whose craftsmanship masked their purpose. This convergence of science, psychology, and engineering reveals a disturbing truth about Roman culture. The pursuit of beauty and the infliction of pain were not opposites, they were intertwined.
The Colosseum did not fall silent because Rome experienced a moral awakening. It faded because the empire weakened, funding diminished, political priorities shifted. The machinery of spectacle could no longer be sustained, but the psychological legacy remained. The games revealed the precariousness of civilization, how swiftly empathy can erode when authority sanctions cruelty, how easily the spectacle of suffering can replace genuine justice, and how quickly ordinary people can become complicit when violence is normalized. Roman citizens were not monsters. They were humans shaped by systems. Their enjoyment of brutality was not inherent, it was cultivated across generations through ritual, reward, and the intoxicating experience of collective power. The Colosseum stands today not merely as an architectural marvel, but as a caution carved in stone. A reminder that the boundary between civilization and barbarism is not defined by technology or wealth, but by what a society chooses to celebrate. When suffering becomes entertainment, when cruelty becomes tradition, when the crowd becomes the arbiter of life and death, the foundations of civilization tremble. Rome's arena culture did not end, it merely changed form, and its lessons echo across every age that follows.